I'm so stressed. I'm just like trying to pack up my life is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I don't know why that's hitting me now. It's also hitting me now.
After Rachel Zegler's highly publicized stage breakdown in London, whispers began circulating across the industry that Disney might even be rethinking its plans for Snow White. For a studio that invested millions into building her as the face of one of their most iconic fairy tales, the idea of distancing themselves now says a lot. What happened in London wasn't just a bad night at the theatre, it was a slow-motion unraveling of a career in front of a live audience. Fans described scenes of confusion and shock, objects being thrown, Rachel visibly shaken and reportedly sobbing backstage, and a performance so uncomfortable that even loyal supporters admitted they hated themselves for watching. It was the kind of moment where you could almost see someone's Hollywood dreams slipping away right before your eyes. And yet, the irony is that Snow White has been one of the biggest streaming successes for Disney+, pulling in millions of views. That contrast, between a massive digital hit and a personal meltdown on stage, has left people asking why Disney would consider cutting ties with a star whose film has already brought them so much attention. If you only saw the polished TikTok edits circulating online, you might have thought Rachel's London performance was a bold, experimental comeback moment, the type of reinvention story Hollywood loves. But once you step outside the viral clips and talk to people who were actually in the theatre, the truth looks a lot different. Rachel had taken on the lead role in the London revival of Evita, a production that came with heavy expectations. On the surface, the video snippets made the staging look edgy and stylish, but those who sat through the entire show described it as a complete disaster dressed up in pretty visuals. According to eyewitnesses, the performance lacked rhythm, timing, and any real sense of emotional connection. Instead of a triumphant star turn, it felt like watching someone crumble under the weight of pressure. Audience members confessed that they regretted spending their money and even said they physically felt uncomfortable being in the theatre, which is just about the worst reaction you could hope for when you're trying to convince people of your staying power in the industry. And this wasn't an isolated opinion from one or two disappointed fans. Once clips went viral and reviews began spreading online, a flood of attendees stepped forward with eerily similar stories. The real drama, though, started backstage. Multiple accounts claimed Rachel was in tears long before the curtain even went up, at one point refusing to step onto the stage at all. What the audience eventually saw was not a composed professional ready to deliver one of the most famous roles in musical theatre, it was someone already unraveling emotionally before the show had even begun. By the time she finally appeared, many believe she was too deep in breakdown mode to ever salvage the performance. Then came the controversy that really ignited the anger, the staging of Don't Cry for Me Argentina. For theatregoers, this song is the crown jewel of Evita, the moment fans wait for. Some people on social media tried to defend the choice of performing it outside the theatre as a bold artistic experiment by director Jamie Lloyd. But those explanations quickly fell apart when actual ticket holders began voicing their outrage. Instead of singing the number live for the audience who had paid high prices for seats inside the London Palladium, Rachel appeared on a balcony outside, delivering the iconic song to random passers-by on the street. Inside the theatre, paying customers were left to watch the entire thing on video screens, as if they were streaming a concert rather than attending a live performance. For many, it felt like a complete betrayal of what live theatre is supposed to be about. People don't spend their hard-earned money to watch a video projection of the most important song in the show, they want the raw power of a live performance, the connection of being in the same room when history is made on stage. Instead, they got a detached, distant broadcast that stripped the moment of its intimacy. This wasn't just a minor creative quirk, it was a decision that undermined the entire experience. For theatre lovers, it felt cheap. For casual fans, it felt like they'd been scammed. And for Rachel, it only added fuel to the fire of criticism already building around her, turning what could have been her big West End triumph into a cautionary tale of what happens when hype collides with reality. Think about Jamie Lloyd's style for a moment. This is the same man who reimagined Sunset Boulevard with sharp, unconventional choices that divided critics. In many ways, what he did with Don't Cry for Me Argentina fits perfectly into his reputation. Supporters of his vision argue that staging Rachel Zegler's performance outside the theatre wasn't a gimmick, but an intentional stroke of genius. In their view, it highlighted the song's meaning. Eva Peron wasn't singing to the elite sitting comfortably inside expensive theater seats, but to the poor people of Argentina, the ones who never could have afforded admission in the first place. To them, Jamie Lloyd's decision was a bold act of thematic clarity. Whether you loved or hated his approach in Sunset Boulevard or in Evita, even skeptics admit there's a brilliance to aligning the staging with the heart of the story. But peel back that interpretation and the picture becomes murkier. For many audience members, it didn't feel like art at all, it felt like damage control. After watching Rachel's meltdown unfold on stage, it became clear to some that moving the iconic number outside wasn't an act of creative rebellion but a desperate attempt to keep the chaos inside the theater under wraps. Instead of elevating the show, it highlighted just how unstable the entire production had become. And then came the irony that no one could miss. During her London trip, Rachel was spotted wearing a shirt emblazoned with the words F*** nepotism. The problem? Her entire Hollywood breakout was built on connections, most notably her relationship with Steven Spielberg, who handpicked her for West Side Story and effectively launched her career. That same connection paved the way for her Snow White casting. Wearing a shirt mocking nepotism while cashing massive Disney checks is the equivalent of holding a down with corporate greed sign while collecting pay from one of the biggest corporations in the world. The disconnect between the image she was trying to project and the reality of her career was staggering. What's worse is that Rachel seemed more focused on making political statements and bold fashion choices than on salvaging her professional reputation. While she was out there doubling down on her activist persona, her career was unraveling faster than a viral TikTok trend. Industry insiders whispered about how quickly the pressure was breaking her down, and according to several reports, Rachel even began searching for a therapist shortly after Snow White tanked at the box office. And let's be real, when your movie loses a studio hundreds of millions of dollars, you're not just facing bad reviews. You're facing professional humiliation on a global scale. That kind of destruction doesn't just bruise your ego, it can define your career permanently. Executives in Hollywood are ruthless, and they have long memories. The moment Rachel's name comes up in a studio meeting, what's the first thing people will think of? The colossal disaster that was Snow White. Sources claim her association with the film has become a permanent stain, reminding everyone of the project that bled Disney dry, forced them to scrap years of carefully planned content, and made the studio rethink its entire live-action remake strategy. This wasn't just a box office disappointment, it was a cultural embarrassment. The fallout has been massive. Disney's financial hit was so severe that they quietly pulled the plug on future remake projects, including Tangled, which insiders had called their most ambitious live-action adaptation yet. All of it vanished in the shadow of Snow White's failure, and Rachel's name was at the center of it. The truth is brutal. Rachel Zegler is now associated with failure after failure. Snow White wasn't her only misstep, it marked her fourth consecutive box office flop. Each release has underperformed, leaving behind a trail of disappointed fans, lost revenue, and growing doubts about whether she can carry a major project. In Hollywood, reputations are everything, and right now, Rachel's reputation is that of a liability. Within Hollywood circles, the consensus has become brutally clear: Rachel Zegler is now viewed as box office poison. Every studio executive, agent, and casting director knows it, and her attempted transition into theater hasn't done much to change that perception. At the moment, she has no upcoming film projects lined up, nothing in development, nothing in pre-production, not even a rumored attachment in industry gossip. In Hollywood terms, that makes her persona non grata. Studios aren't returning her agent's calls, and directors aren't giving her a second thought when casting. It's as if the phone lines have gone silent. Her stage career hasn't provided a safe haven either. Weeks before the official opening of the Evita revival, ticket sales were already struggling. Rows of seats remained unsold, a glaring red flag for a production that should have generated excitement. For Rachel, this created a perfect storm: financial strain, lack of audience interest, and public scrutiny all colliding at the very moment she was trying to reinvent herself. Instead of rebuilding her reputation, she found herself sinking deeper into professional quicksand. Given the mounting failures, it's not difficult to understand why she began experiencing emotional breakdowns backstage in London. This is where the story takes a darker, more serious turn. According to multiple insiders, Rachel endured a complete psychological collapse during this period. We're not talking about nerves or mild stage fright. Witnesses described it as a full-blown emotional breakdown. During rehearsals, she reportedly broke down after attempting to sing one of her songs, unable to continue. Several people present confirmed that by the time the actual performances began, her timing, rhythm, and overall stage presence were noticeably off. For a trained professional, that level of disconnect was a major red flag, and it suggested her mental state was deteriorating under the weight of consecutive failures. The evidence of her unraveling wasn't just anecdotal, either. Audience members recorded footage of performances where Rachel seemed distracted, out of sync, and disconnected from the material. This wasn't simply artistic interpretation or performance anxiety, it was a public breakdown unfolding in real time. The decision to stage "Don't Cry for Me Argentina" outside the theater only amplified the narrative. Far from being a bold creative flourish, it looked to many like an attempt to hide the fact that Rachel could no longer deliver the performance as expected. And then came the worst moment for her image: reports that audience members began throwing objects during her appearances. Nothing screams career comeback less than having to dodge projectiles from your own paying fans. It was the ultimate humiliation, a moment that confirmed her struggles weren't just backstage whispers but public knowledge. Despite all of this chaos, Rachel didn't retreat or take time to regroup. Instead, she doubled down on making political statements, even while leaving the stage door after performances. This decision further inflamed tensions, especially given her outspoken support for Palestine during the Snow White promotional campaign. The controversy became even messier because her co-star, Gal Gadot, is Israeli. Their promotional appearances together were marked by awkward silences, strained smiles, and an unspoken tension that was impossible for audiences not to notice. In the end, Rachel's downfall wasn't caused by one single bad performance or one unpopular opinion. It was the accumulation of failures, missteps, and controversies, all colliding in a very short period of time. What could have been the start of a redemption arc instead became a cautionary tale of what happens when professional misfortune, public backlash, and personal turmoil converge. And here's the truly baffling part: Rachel Zegler still doesn't seem to care about maintaining her professional relationships, even after her career has suffered one humiliating hit after another. In Hollywood, when you fall from grace, the first rule of survival is to keep your head down, rebuild bridges, and remind the industry that you can be reliable. But Rachel? She's doing the exact opposite. Instead of repairing her reputation, she continues to double down on the behavior that has alienated studios, directors, and even fellow actors. It's as if she either doesn't realize or doesn't care that every move she makes is being scrutinized by an industry that has already labeled her as a liability. The strange irony is that despite all the negative press surrounding her, Rachel still managed to draw massive crowds when word spread that she would be performing "Don't Cry for Me Argentina" outside the theater. People weren't gathering out of pure admiration, they were curious. They wanted to see if she could actually deliver a comeback moment under pressure. Was this going to be the performance that silenced her critics, that proved she still had the star power to command an audience? According to both critics and regular theatergoers who were there, the answer was no. Instead of delivering a triumphant return, Rachel's performance fell flat. The energy wasn't there, her voice lacked conviction, and the moment that was supposed to re-establish her as a force in the entertainment world fizzled into yet another disappointment. But what happened next pushed this entire saga into the realm of the bizarre. While Rachel was unraveling in London, suffering public breakdowns, facing harsh reviews, and watching her live career collapse, something completely unexpected was happening with the very project that destroyed her reputation: Disney's live-action Snow White. The movie, which had bombed catastrophically at the global box office, suddenly experienced a shocking resurrection on streaming. When it dropped on Disney Plus on June 11th, the numbers were staggering. In less than 24 hours, the film leapt from 4th place to number 1 across 48 different countries. That's right, the same movie that had cost Disney hundreds of millions of dollars, generated global backlash, and branded Rachel as box office poison was suddenly sitting at the top of the platform's charts. At first glance, this might look like a victory worth celebrating. On paper, those numbers are impressive. Any other studio would spin this as proof of a sleeper hit, bragging about its streaming dominance. But behind the scenes at Disney, executives weren't celebrating, they were panicking. Instead of seeing the surge as a win, they saw it as a nightmare scenario. Why? Because the film's sudden prominence threatened to reopen every wound they had spent months trying to heal. When Snow White first hit theaters, it became one of the most controversial Disney releases in recent memory. Online debates about wokeness, casting, and disrespect for the original animated classic dominated headlines, overshadowing everything else. The studio had been working tirelessly to bury that backlash, quietly moving on to other projects and hoping audiences would forget. But now, thanks to Disney+, the film was back in the spotlight, and so were all the controversies they wanted erased. This is where Disney found itself trapped in a paradox. The streaming success looked great on financial reports, but culturally, it was a disaster. The resurgence reminded audiences why they were angry in the first place. Lifelong Disney fans, especially those who grew up with the 1937 Snow White, felt betrayed by what they saw as a hollow remake stripped of the original's magic. Instead of celebrating a new interpretation, many saw the film as proof that the company no longer respected its own legacy. By keeping the movie front and center on Disney+, the company was essentially poking the hornet's nest, reigniting the fury of its most loyal fan base.
I look like a tourist. She's giving mom realness. She's giving you have to be nice to me, it's the law realness. Don't fuck with me.
And if the streaming numbers told one story, the merchandise told another. Disney had banked on Snow White being a merchandising juggernaut, launching exclusive limited edition collectibles, apparel, and tie-in products designed to sell out instantly. But months after release, those items are still sitting unsold. Shelves remain stocked, online stores are still listing them, and even steep discounts haven't cleared inventory. For Disney, a company whose entire empire is built on merchandise sales, this is nothing short of catastrophic. It proves what the numbers can't hide. People may have clicked play out of curiosity, but they had no genuine love for this version of the story. They weren't buying into the brand, and they weren't spending money. This leaves Disney in a no-win situation. If they promote the film's streaming success, they risk reigniting controversy and alienating their most passionate fans. If they downplay it, they look like they're ignoring one of their biggest digital hits. Either way, the brand suffers. The company is stuck with a project that is simultaneously a numerical success and a cultural embarrassment. And standing in the middle of this mess is Rachel Zegler, the face of the movie, whose career is being dragged deeper into chaos with every new headline. This entire sequence of events tells you absolutely everything you need to know about the genuine sentiment of the paying audience. On the surface, the streaming numbers might suggest there was interest, but in reality, that so-called interest was nothing more than hate-watching or idle curiosity. People may have clicked Snow White on Disney Plus just to see if the negative buzz was true, but they weren't investing real money to show actual support. There was no surge in ticket sales, no lines at theaters, no rush for merchandise. And that's the ultimate metric that matters in Hollywood. Are people willing to part with their cash to experience the story? In this case, the answer was a resounding no. The proof was everywhere. Viral videos captured the disaster in real time. Theatergoers, fully aware of the controversy and the negative press surrounding the film, recorded their experiences as they walked into auditoriums expecting at least a modest crowd. Instead, what they found was surreal. Cavernous spaces echoing with silence, illuminated rows of red seats completely unoccupied, and a level of emptiness you could feel in your bones. One particularly viral clip featured a moviegoer filming themselves entering a 2 p.m. screening, muttering a sarcastic line as they walked, "Okie dokie, I'm walking into Snow White. Let's see how empty it is." With their phone camera rolling, they panned across the room, counted aloud, 1 or 2, before breaking into awkward laughter. There were literally just 2 people sitting in the entire theater. This wasn't just a case of a weak opening weekend, the kind of thing that can sometimes be explained away by bad weather or stiff competition. This was a total collapse. Rows upon rows of deserted seats turned Snow White into a ghost town. In practical terms, theaters were burning money just by keeping it on the schedule. They still had to pay ushers, run projectors, keep lights and air conditioning on, and allocate staff for screenings that no one was attending. It was unsustainable. Exhibitors, who usually have strict contractual obligations to keep Disney films running on a set number of screens, suddenly began searching for loopholes. They wanted out. And in some cases, they outright broke agreements with Disney just to free up their auditoriums for movies that could actually draw paying customers. That is almost unheard of in the industry, and it demonstrates the sheer severity of the rejection. If you want to grasp just how bad this was, consider the comparison with other films released at the same time. A modestly budgeted Lilo and Stitch revival, about an alien pet and his bond with a little girl, managed to outgross Snow White's entire domestic theatrical run in its opening weekend alone. That is not just a loss, that is humiliation on a historic scale. Disney had poured hundreds of millions into a flagship remake of one of its most iconic classics, complete with marketing blitzes, PR campaigns, and endless media coverage. And yet, a smaller film with far less money behind it beat Snow White effortlessly, delivering a gut punch to the studio's reputation. Internationally, the disaster took on a whole new dimension. Countries didn't just ignore Snow White, some actively pushed back against it. Several territories restricted screenings, while others voiced cultural disapproval. Lebanon made headlines by outright banning the movie, not even giving it the chance to flop locally. Their decision wasn't based on box office math, it was based on principle, signaling that the film had crossed a line with its cultural and political baggage. When nations are shutting their doors before the first ticket can even be sold, you know your movie isn't simply unpopular, it's radioactive. By the time all of this unfolded, theater owners were practically begging Disney to pull the plug early. They didn't just see Snow White as a box office flop, they saw it as a liability that was poisoning their relationship with regular moviegoers. When audiences buy tickets, they trust theaters to deliver experiences worth their time. But forcing Snow White into showtimes that no one wanted felt like a betrayal of that trust. Theaters had to protect their own credibility, and the only way to do that was to distance themselves from Disney's misstep as quickly as possible. In the end, Snow White became more than just a commercial failure, it became a cautionary tale. It showed how quickly public perception can turn, how fragile brand loyalty really is, and how even the most powerful studio in Hollywood can find itself abandoned by theaters, audiences, and international markets all at once. It wasn't merely a rejection, it was a loud, unmistakable declaration that Disney had completely misread its audience. Rachel Zegler's story has now become one of the most surreal cautionary tales in modern Hollywood. The same actress who was once handpicked to become Disney's newest princess, meant to lead the next era of live-action remakes, has instead become the face of one of the studio's most expensive disasters. Publicly documented emotional breakdowns in London theaters, coupled with empty rows of seats and audiences walking out, turned what should have been her redemption arc into something that felt more like a tragic unraveling. And yet, despite this mountain of controversy, the movie she headlined still managed to skyrocket to the top of the streaming charts on Disney+. That bizarre paradox, being both a streaming hit and a brand-damaging liability, has left Disney in an unprecedented corporate nightmare. Imagine the internal conversations happening at the top floors of Disney's headquarters, executives sitting in boardrooms, staring at spreadsheets, trying to quietly strategize how to deal with their own #1 streaming movie. On paper, the success looks undeniable. In reality, every day the film stays visible, it drags their reputation further into the mud, reigniting backlash, memes, and angry debates that the studio has tried desperately to bury. Pulling the film down risks looking like an admission of failure. Keeping it up makes them look like they're leaning into the very controversy that destroyed its box office run. It's a lose-lose situation, exactly the kind of corporate trap that sends chills through every other studio watching from the sidelines. For Rachel herself, the consequences have been even more brutal. She turned to theater as a way of rebuilding her credibility and reshaping her narrative, hoping that live audiences might offer her the fresh start that Hollywood no longer seemed willing to give. But those empty seats in London, coupled with scathing reviews and first-hand accounts of her unstaged struggles, suggest that even theatergoers aren't ready to forgive or forget. A comeback requires momentum, but instead she found herself facing rows of silence, headlines mocking her performances, and whispers of breakdowns backstage. It's not just a bump in the road, it's the collapse of the very escape route she tried to take. And here's the harsh truth about the entertainment industry. Failure leaves a stain. One flop can be excused as bad luck. Two can be written off as unfortunate timing. But 4 consecutive box office bombs, capped with a disastrous theater run and viral footage of emotional breakdowns, establish a pattern that the industry can't ignore. Studios don't gamble on actors who carry reputations as box office poison, and right now, Rachel has become the textbook definition of that label. The bigger picture here is almost more fascinating than her individual career collapse. This entire saga has turned into a masterclass in how quickly the Hollywood machine can flip. One year, you're on the fast track to superstardom, hailed as Disney's next billion-dollar face. The next, you're navigating back-to-back flops, PR disasters, audience rejection, and social media meltdowns that play out in real time. It's a brutal reminder that in this industry, your career can implode overnight when personal choices, professional missteps, and public controversies all converge at the wrong moment. So the question remains, is Rachel Zegler truly finished, or is this simply a brutal detour on the road to a potential comeback? Hollywood has a strange history of reviving fallen stars, but it requires humility, reinvention, and a project so strong that it forces people to reevaluate you. Whether Rachel has that kind of resilience is something only time will tell. For now, she sits at the crossroads, caught between becoming a cautionary tale that gets studied for years, or staging one of the most unlikely comebacks in recent memory. And as always, I want to hear your thoughts. Should Disney keep Snow White on Disney Plus, even though it risks further damaging their brand every day it stays up? Do you think Rachel's London theatre performance was truly as bad as the reviews claimed, or has the internet exaggerated the chaos? Drop your opinions in the comments below, and if you're fascinated by Hollywood meltdowns and career collapses the mainstream media won't cover, make sure to subscribe, because trust me, the chaos never stops in this town, and I'll be here to break down every disaster as it unfolds.